Welcome to another Now Playing vlog where I talk about the games that I've been playing lately and what I think of them. This video wouldn't exist without the support of my Patreon backers. Thank you so much to everyone that has pledged so far. Crosstalk is a team party game with a great twist. It's a guessing game. You're playing in teams and both of the clue givers on either team are trying to get their teammates to guess the same word. But when I give a clue, I'm giving to the opposing team's guessers. So I give my clue, they get their turn to guess. Then if they don't get it right, the other team's clue giver gives a clue, then it's my teammates' turns to guess. So I don't want to give too much away in my clues because then the other team will get it. The other interesting twist is that there's a hidden word that both of the teams have been given ahead of time. So I've written something on a whiteboard, it's just one word, no proper nouns, and that's going to help them understand a context to the clues that I'm giving verbally. So they have that hidden bit of information, and that's brilliant. That makes this game because you know that they know this one thing. The other team might have a completely different secret word, and so the clues that you give can make no sense to the other team. I really enjoy Crosstalk. I've played it 10 times now, and with a bunch of different numbers. It works well as a 4-player game, just one clue giver on either team and a guesser, but it really sings when you've got more people guessing because they have whiteboards and they can kind of discuss their answer with their teammates and really think it through. Different minds will work differently. And there's an advanced variant that makes the game even more interesting, where you have this extra whiteboard that you can draw lines between certain clues, you can emphasize things, you can ask your guessers to think of a synonym to a clue. So you're using the clues that have been given, which have all been written down, and you're drawing connections between them, ones that they perhaps hadn't noticed. So you can give clues and really link stuff together. They can make absolutely no sense when you give them as words, but when you hand them this board and it shows you how it will connect, it just suddenly clicks. And that's another thing that I really like about the game, even with the normal variant, is simply that you're there, as a guesser, you are completely lost. You've had all these words thrown at you that make no sense and none of them seem to connect. They're coming from opposing teams, so there's no common ground. And then suddenly, just like cracking a code, you realize the link between all of them. There's a real challenge for both sides. The clue givers want to keep it really subtle, and it's challenging to only be able to use one word and no proper nouns. And from the other side, the guessers don't want to give away too much, because if they guess something and it's not right, they're giving information that they know from their secret clue to the other team, and that can often tip the balance for the other team. I'm giving Crosstalk actual love because it's one of my favorite new party games. It's a designer party game, just like Codenames, just like Word Slam. They've taken a very simple idea, which is effectively catchphrase, added a couple of twists, put the effort in, given it that polish, which just raises it above any game that I played as a kid. I love that it rewards creativity in the clues that you give, that you can get better at the game. And ultimately, just like any great party game, it has you laughing, it plays great with big groups, it's super easy to get into, it's accessible for everyone. That's Crosstalk. I actually love Crosstalk. Azul is a game coming from Plan B Games, and this is an abstract game, albeit a very pretty one. And the idea is you're building Portuguese palaces, and you're doing it with these wonderful 3D plastic tiles. And they are drawn out of a bag at random, placed on these different circles, and you're having to decide which circle to pick from. You can only pick one type of tile. So you might get one of a tile or 3 of the same tile, and then the rest get pushed into the center. So later on, people can pick from the center, but the same rules apply. You're trying to fill up these rows on your board, and then when they're filled up, at the end of a round, the tile will move across and it will score for any lines it's adjacent to, horizontally or vertically. So you want to be building tiles next to other ones. And at the end of the game, you're going to get loads of points for columns. The game finishes when the first person completes a row. You also get some extra points for rows, and you get points if you get all of one tile. So if you manage to get every tile in on your grid of a certain type. It has a lot of decisions. It's always interesting, this game, where you are trying to work out plan for the future? Are you going to have enough space? Because if you have to take too many of a certain type of tile, they fall on the floor and you get minus points for them that round. And then, of course, you're trying to go for your adjacencies, you're trying to collect the sets or build your columns, and then you can also watch what other people are going to need and take the tiles that they might want, or is the tile that you want going to come back round to you because other people might have taken it by that point? It's a really simple game. It sets up in 30 seconds and the rules are in 5 minutes. I can't really fault it as a game. In the only way I can really is that it hasn't grabbed me enough. I've enjoyed every game I've played, but I don't feel compelled to go back. I'm quite happy to set it aside now. I've played Azul 3 times and that's me done. And it works well, 2, 3, 4 players. It's quite a relaxed game. You don't feel that there's too much interaction. You're not at each other's throats. And so I could imagine playing it with parents because the rules are so simple and it's got that casual feel to it. But for me, it doesn't have that X factor. It doesn't elevate itself above other abstract games that I've really enjoyed. And I've heard people talk about it as a gateway game, but I don't really feel that, because for me, a gateway game has to pull people in. It has to show people the best of our modern board game hobby. And unfortunately, the theme of Portuguese palaces, for me, isn't going to grab any of my non-gaming friends in. It doesn't have that excitement or that relatability of something like Pandemic. And it also doesn't have that length or that investment. It's over in sort of 20 or 30 minutes. Whereas something like Pandemic or Ticket to Ride, you get really into it for that hour that you're playing and you want to play again. And I just haven't had that with Azul. So it's nice enough, but there are just so many other better games out there. CV Pocket is a light card game that's coming out at Essen, and this is from Grana and Philip Malunsky, who designed CV, which is a game that I really love. It's in my top 10 couples games. And in CV, you're trying to live a great life. You're trying to be happy. You're trying to have relationships and good jobs, and you're using all of that to build on. And CV Pocket, the idea is very similar. It uses similar artwork. You're trying to live a life. But for me, the theme doesn't quite come through. And let me explain how the game works. So there's a grid of cards in the center that everyone's drawing from. So on your turn, you're going to be taking a card from one of the 3 columns. And the card that you last took has a mode of transport on it. Either a bike, which allows you to pick from row 1, a car, which allows you to pick from row 2, or a plane, which allows you to pick from row 3. And so when you take a card, you're looking ahead to the cards that you might be able to take later on. And if you take a card, the columns fall down so that they get refilled. And it's an interesting enough idea. It doesn't have any real connection to the theme, but it allows you to look ahead, and I appreciate that. And then the rest of the game is about collecting symbols, really. If you have 3 knowledge symbols, that's going to be worth 7 points, whereas if you only have 1 or 2, you get minus points. And there are cards with goals on them that will get you points for certain things, so they're giving you something to aim for, and that's nice as well. So you might need to collect sets of all the different types of transport, or you want to create sets of relationships. Relationships also get you points for pairs. And so there's definitely stuff to think about here. There's stuff to aim for. There's real reason why one person wins and one person doesn't. It's nothing. It works as a game. It's just the theme doesn't really come through. You're not living a life. Often you're picking up cards with identical names on them, and there's no narrative to it. In CV, the original game, you would do something in your childhood that would make sense. It would lead on because it would give you the skills to then get a certain job, and you would create this story, and you really bought into it. Probably because it took you longer to build this thing up. Whereas CV Pocket's very quick, and you're just taking these cards and you're not really thinking about them. You're not reading them, and it doesn't have that structure to it as to one thing leads to another. And so it doesn't feel like you're creating a life. So in that instance, it's just a filler card game. And it's not a bad one, but whilst I like the drawing from the middle and the transport thing works okay, I just don't think it has enough of an interesting twist to play ahead of the bunch of other filler card games that I would have that could play with 2 to 4 players. So I appreciate it's a small box. The rules are simple and effective, but it just doesn't grab me quite enough to want to keep hold of. That's CV Pocket. That's a Question is a party game from designer Vlada Shvartil, who designed Codenames. This is a game about putting questions to your friends. So I might ask another player at the table, would they choose to be a world-famous actor or to age half as fast from now on? They have to secretly decide which they would pick, and then everyone else around the table has to decide which they think they would pick as well. So it's about understanding your friends, or at least trying to understand the people that you're playing with. And I like that aspect to the game, trying to read people's minds. It's also a challenge for me as the question master. I want to ask a difficult question, one that I think the other players will get wrong, because I get points for every wrong answer that the other players guess. And it works. It's a fun game that often has you discussing afterwards why you answered one way or another. I think those are the best times of this game, when they pick something and nobody can understand it, or when it's really close and everyone's trying to judge the merits of one thing over another. There are 3 different types of questions. One is, which of these would you choose? One is, who do you consider to be worse? And so that's asking you more moral or ethical questions, such as somebody who tells spoilers to people who haven't seen the movie yet, or somebody who doesn't scoop their dog's poop. And so that is interesting, discussing with your friends about which is worse than the other. And then the other one, which would you miss more if it ceased to exist? And so you could ask them whether they would miss pizza or the moon and the stars in the night sky. And so it's that challenge of finding things that are really tough to decide between. And that in itself can be a little bit frustrating in this game, because the cards can vary wildly. And I feel like that is probably the nature of the game. I think it would almost be impossible to design a game where everything felt like on an even keel, and of course it is subjective as well. But there are oftentimes you got a hand of cards and you feel like, well, there's no way you would ask the difference between one of those things and another of those things, because of course they would miss Google more than they would miss Mexican food. I don't know. That was just a random example. And there's also questions in this game that I would say are slightly less forgivable from the designers, because they've just asked weird things. Maybe it's a cultural thing, but when it comes to who do you consider worse, and it says someone who destroys posters put up by rival political parties, it's just like, I don't know, we just found ourselves not caring. Or someone who doesn't report workplace tax fraud. It's not something that we get up on our soapbox about and you have an argument about. And that's the thing, is you want to have those discussions. And so when it's dull things like that, it's just not that interesting. When you compare That's a Question to other party games, it's fun. I'm just not sure it holds up. I don't think it has that long-term replayability. You want to play it over and over again. Now, it comes with 108 cards, and there's 3 different options on each card. But I've played it only a few times, and already I'm starting to see the same things and getting a bit bored of them. But you could pair up each one to create so many different questions, right? But that isn't how it works in reality, because most of them don't pair up nicely to create a really tough question, no matter how weird or wonderful your friends are. So that's my only issue with the game, really, is that I had fun with it. I think it does create good conversation, and I think it plays nicely. It's probably best with 6 players. It's got a couple of little gamey aspects where you can bet on an answer to get extra points, or you can bet that you think everyone would get the wrong answer on that question, so that allows you to get more points that round. So I'm going to keep it for now. I'm going to play it a few more times, but I don't see it lasting forever. That's a Question. Vikings Gone Wild is a deck building game that I'd heard a lot of good things about, that I understood was going to have a bunch of twists on deck building games. And that's the reason that I wanted to try it, was because I'm not hugely into deck building games. I talk a lot about Clank being the one game that kind of changed that for me, and I was hoping that this would be similar. The difference with Vikings Gone Wild is, well, there's a couple of things. You can buy these buildings that are permanent fixtures in front of you, and they can build resources. You're collecting beer and gold to be able to buy more stuff. And then you're also attacking other players' buildings, and that's where a lot of the points lie. But it's not quite how you'd imagine with attacking. You're not hurting them permanently, so it doesn't damage their game so much, but you're getting points from attacking them. Now, that's where a lot of the points lie. So other players then need to get defense cards, so to stop you attacking all the time and running away with points. And you play defense cards after your turn. You will keep them secret so you can reveal them if people attack you, which does allow for some interesting bluffing because you can keep cards that aren't defense cards by and they might assume you're defending. But the game forces you into this attack and defending as the primary way to get points, and it just doesn't feel that interesting enough. It doesn't feel like attacking. And that's the thing with this game, is that the theme is cartoonish and silly. It's based off a video game app, and it doesn't feel like Vikings at all. It's deck buildings at the best of times are loose on theme, and this doesn't do anything better than Dominion, really, as far as I'm concerned. There are lots of options. There's so many different types of cards that you can buy. There's definitely different paths to victory if you want to try them out. For me, it's still a basic deck building game. It feels very mechanical. It doesn't feel thematic. It feels very repetitive. And it doesn't have the excitement or the immersion or the investment that I found with Clank. And so for me, it's just a pass. But if you do like deck building games, you like the cute artwork with Vikings Gone Wild, then there possibly is something here for you. Some of the people that I played with enjoyed the game, and there's also expansions to make it a team game and a cooperative game. There's a lot of scope with Vikings Gone Wild. There's a lot of cards out there available, but yeah, it's a pass for me. Those are some of the games that I've been playing lately. What do you think about them? Let me know in the comments. And I put links to all of them in the description of this video below. If you want to support ActualLol grow bigger and better, please head over to patreon.com/ActualLol to pledge. I'm John Purkis. Thanks for watching.